Greetings, everyone, whoever that may be. Dark Knight Cowboy, what's up? Sorry, my hair's a little messy today, man. Oh, my camera's all jacked up. You can see the edge of my face. I need to work on my backdrop. I got a cool flag I can hang up. It goes matches with my nuke little bomb over here. I need to get rid of some of this junk. Just get a better backdrop overall. Still got my. Oh yeah, I think this guy turns on too. There we go. Keeping it Vegas with the neon. So let me know if you guys can hear and see okay. It has been working. I'm going to be trying out um, sorry, I got rolled over my own cord here. Trying out the Rumble live stream platform, which I've used with JJ before, because I think it has more functionality and importantly, it streams on both platforms at once. It was just a little finicky for me. I am not a tech guy. Obviously, I'm reasonably intelligent, but I am not knowledgeable with tech stuff, and I hate trying to figure out new stuff. Yeah, we survived the solar flare, and that's one of the things I wanted to talk about today is that honestly, what are the dangers of the solar flare is overblown or what? Because we've been hearing a lot about that stuff as a possibility. Obviously, we know it is a possibility, but this was supposed to be one of the most severe solar flares that we've had in decades. And I had obviously there were some minor disruptions. I saw Elon Musk posting about his satellites being stressed and whatnot. So maybe this will set us a good benchmark for what it actually takes to cause problems. Because in general, there were no widespread problems, and widespread being the key word here. No widespread, no major problems. Internet may have been spotty or like issues like that, but nothing went down. We had no grid down issues, no power outages that I know of, things like that. So it wasn't something from a preparedness standpoint that approached even being a moderate incident of any kind. If you didn't know it was happening, most people wouldn't have known anything was different, other than the extra aurora borealis in areas that don't normally get it, which I didn't see any. I saw pictures of some people had taken in Vegas. I didn't spend a whole lot of time outside looking, but when I was outside, I didn't notice any of that. And I had heard from other people too that it was barely visible by the naked eye here, but it showed up well on pictures, depending on what your camera settings were and whatnot. So yeah, so what does this mean for the future? Does it mean it's really not something we have to worry about? Does it mean we only have to worry if they're more severe than this, which is pretty rare? What do you guys think? I think that's at least the information that we got out of it is that this level, even though this was considered severe, that this level or lower isn't going to cause problems, didn't cause problems. Um, so it would need to be more severe than that. Hard to tell exactly how severe they're going to be, but this was, like I said, supposed to be the worst one in at least several decades. Good evening, SFDCL. Appreciate it. But yeah, so I was not at all worried about it because I feel like we'd seen this movie before. I, took some minor precautions, but in addition to like my normal preparedness, also when it comes down to it, a solar flare type event, an EMF, EMP, whatever Carrington event is way less scary to me than a like nuclear EMP attack type situation because of the way that a solar EMP is only going to attack long systems that it can accumulate, like power lines that can accumulate the EMF. And it would almost certainly not affect electronics that were not plugged in, smaller stuff like flashlights, like radios, like phones. And most houses circuit breakers are would probably pop and protect your other electronics anyway, but certainly as something that wasn't plugged in, most of that stuff is not expected to be affected by a solar EMP. So like no vehicles should have any issues, no watches, no flashlights, no gun optics, no phones, no radios that aren't plugged in. Like all that air gapped electronics should be fine with a solar EMF. So we could still, of course, have major grid down if it overloaded the power system. The whole grid for the country could go down, which would be a catastrophic level shit the fan scenario, but it still wouldn't be anywhere near as bad as a nuclear EMP that just fried everything electronic. That would be so much worse because you just couldn't recover from it. It's back to the Stone Age versus just not having grid power. So there's even a lot of people that, depending on your system, if you had an off-grid, solar setup or something, you'd probably be fine under most solar EMF situations, especially if you've added in some of these products that like um, EMP shield, or the EMP doctor has a bunch of these like nodes that you can put on that absorb extra electricity surges and stuff like that. Dan Jones says, how are you holding up now a few months post your back surgery? Good. I'm definitely need to get more into stretching and working out because I'm at the point where I think I can handle that without any issues, but I've been a little bit squeamish about it. And I need to get over that. Cold Steel's the best knife. I don't know about the best, but they definitely are a extremely good merging of functionality and value in their like entry level stuff. You can spend a lot on Cold Steel knives too, and I'm not enough of a knife guy to tell you whether, the expensive Cold Steel knives, how they compare to expensive other knives. But when you're talking about like their budget type stuff, they're cold or they're real proof and they're proof videos where they're actually using these. Like these are knives that are designed to be used and they're extremely good for that purpose. And it's extremely good value. And are they the best? Probably not. But most of us don't need the best and are never going to test the limits of that. So much of the things that when we talk about things being better, um, are like shaving your legs when you're swimming or something. Like, does that make a difference at the Olympic level for that like 1 millionth of a second that might matter between a gold and silver? Probably, but for the average person who just wants to be able to swim well, like, does that matter? No, you're never going to notice that. Never be a needle mover. So when that type of benefit is like an extra $100 on a knife, just get something that's solid. And I've always liked Cold Steel stuff, and because it just is sturdy and performs. And there's other like another one I always make the example of is this Glock knife. This thing is like $30 or something. They're insane value. Um, and just like everything else Glock, they're ugly and insanely functional and insanely tough. People put these through insane torture tests. The one thing I do hate about these is this sheath that comes with them is like punitively bad. Like it was made on purpose to be bad. I don't understand it. Other than insanely good retention, like it will not come out. There's nothing else good about this sheath. It's incredibly hard to open with one hand. It doesn't have a good attachment system for Molly or anything like that. And it's just really hard to get that with one hand. Like even when it's on you, it's almost impossible. So it's like a two-handed knife, but atrocious. They need to make Galactus needs to make a regular Kydex sheath. I don't know why they don't. Does the Glock knife come a sharp tip or notably blunted? This one was a good tip. I don't know if you can see it, but it is solid tip on this one. No notable blunting on that one. Have you gotten some before that were kind of jacked up? This one is. Glock knives are great. I mean, like I said, for if you just want like a good tack, I do think you just can't use a sheath though. I don't know what the other options are. I actually just ordered one that someone custom made a Kydex sheath for these. I think you would have to try to get some sort of generic because it's like a liability. I honestly think that if you had this type of this knife, which is a great, just like for the price, I don't think you can beat this knife. I really don't think you can beat this knife for the price. They're like less than $35. But yeah, my hair apocalypse. Hair shit the fan, or she hit the hair maybe. But yeah, more is also incredibly good bang for your buck for and better, I think, for like survival and bushcrafting, wilderness survival, probably better than this. But if you just want an all like a tactical one, like if you want one to go on like a chest rig or a belt rig or something, I think that this one has much better overall applications. Way better in like a tactical self-defense, heavy duty stuff like that than a Moore knife. But if you're specifically talking about like a survival kit, the Moore knives are great and also insanely hard to beat. And that like Scandi grind type of blade, I think, is much better for general bushcraft and survival stuff than this bayonet, which is literally what they were created to be. But overall, like just for kit type stuff, this knife is hard to beat for the price. I think it's impossible to beat for the price, unless you include having to buy a new sheath. Because like I said, this sheath is practically a liability because there's no way you could have this on your gear. It's like super hard to get out with, almost impossible to get out with one hand, which is a huge liability. It's incredibly secure, but like I said, it's almost it is a liability. Yeah, the price to value ratio on the Glock knives is literally unbeatable. I can't think of anything else. They there's some that like the Cold Steel SRK is one that I think is close, but I don't even know what those are priced at these days. Let's check it. The SRK on, yeah, $38. Those are pretty close. 35, 30. And if they have a better sheath. So they're close in the Glock knife. but I think they're a little heavier, a little thicker of a blade, but also very close. That would be if you can't get a new sheath, I'd probably have to go with that just because, like I said, these sheets are really, really bad. Like it's a liability, which I hate because the knife is amazing. But love that knife. Um, so what we're going to talk about today. First of all, I want to talk about, I know you guys know how there's a trick to one-handed, but it's not too obvious. Yeah, and also I've managed to do it, but it's also difficult to do it in a way that you're not endangering because you have to kind of whatever way you're figuring out doing it, whether it's like with a finger or a thumb or with the back of your hand or whatever, you kind of have to hold your hand still while moving the knife out. So you risk cutting yourself with the knife as you pull it out too. So it's definitely just they could even add a little lever on the back of this to make it so you could I don't know, but it's just knife sheaths. No other knife has a sheath like that, so I don't know why theirs is. I think it specifically because it's designed to be a bayonet, so you're not going to like take it out unless you're fixing bayonets. I guess I don't know. I don't know the logic behind this type of sheath that I've never seen anything else use. But anyways, what I want to talk one of the things I want to talk about today, I have like three things on my list here, and the title of this one was I can see the future. But we'll get into that next. The first main topic I want to talk about was if you guys saw this case of this airman getting shot by the police, and you guys know I have no love lost for the police as an institution. I do not hate people because they're cops. I have family members who are police officers. I know it's an incredibly important job. I don't think that there's something that I'm not abolished the police person. That doesn't make any sense. I'm not an anarchist. I think it's something that has to be done, but I think it's so incredibly important that that makes it even more important that it's done well. And the most important element of something being done well, especially when it's something that involves power over other people, is accountability, and that doesn't exist. All that we get with the police nowadays is excuses, and we're at the point now where you cannot give police when they're operating in their official capacity the benefit of the doubt. That doesn't exist. They haven't earned as an institution. They have not earned it. Um, if I see someone shopping in the grocery store and I know they're a cop, I'm not going to be spitting on them or something. But when police are in their official capacity on duty, you cannot give them the benefit of the doubt. It's too dangerous, and we've seen too much evidence that they are willing to and not even break the law. There's so many things that just are technically legal that are now fatal, like this airman situation. You see all these police and bootlickers explaining about why it was okay that this guy got shot for holding a weapon in his own house, doing something that's perfectly legal and excusing it. So it's like, yeah, we know it's legal according to you guys. That's what I'm complaining about. But my point about this is not to rail against the cops because that doesn't do anything, is to point out a couple things you can do to basically eliminate this from happening to you. The first of one is that I don't know why more people don't talk about this, but yeah, stop qualified immunity. That removes accountability completely. But as an in, I mean, good luck with that happening anytime soon. Um, what we can do as individuals, the most important thing you can do to prevent this from happening is not to open your door. You never open like your door. If it's not the cops, you don't want to open your door. We've seen instances of people pretending to be cops. There's just no good reason to open your door unless or until they've proven that they have a valid warrant, in which case they're probably just going to come in anyway. But when you just don't open your door, the Ring cameras or similar, I have a lot of issues with big tech, but the benefits of that in today's society far outweigh those big tech privacy issues, which unless you're going to get rid of your phone and your internet account, you can't really act like that's a big deal anyway for them to know when you're coming out, coming and going from your house, and to prevent situations like this, super beneficial. And just to know what's out there and to be able to talk to them, and no one can complain about not being able to hear you. You have evidence of what they're saying and everything. Like that one, there's a video that popped up recently of the police pretending to be lying to the guy and saying that they were a DoorDash delivery person to get him to come out. That's the thing. Just if that guy had a Ring camera, he would have been able to see. Um, and if someone's not stepping in front of or refusing to, then that's even more reason not to open your door. So don't open your door ever. Just never open your door. If it's a package, they can leave it. If you get any sense of shadiness, tell them to put if you want to sign for it, be like, leave the slip. I'll come pick it up at the UPS store. If you have any uh, reason to be suspicious, if you don't know for a fact you have a package on the way, because you'll get notifications. Like if you order something that needs signature confirmation, um, you'll know, and you'll get an email usually, and then they'll show up. You'll see the truck. you'll see the thing, you'll see the same, you don't just have to with the ring or some other generic version of it, you can see all that and know, okay, this is probably pretty safe. Doesn't look like 15 people pretending to be delivered. Because criminals have done that stuff too. And anything else they can leave, DoorDash, whatever, you can grab it when they leave. And then beyond that is strengthening your physical dwelling. Obviously, storm doors and storm window covers are the best thing you can do. But even if you rent, you just have to get something like the door armor, the doorcade, or at the very least, the one thing anyone can do, even if you're renting an apartment in a big city or whatever, is replace the screws. Here you go. I'm gonna send you a link for just the screws. All you have to do is pull out the ones that are there and putting these. If you put a little like soap or something on them, a lot of times you can get away with not even drilling a pilot hole. Although I recommend doing that because it's a lot easier. You're not going to strip your bit as much. So I would drill a pilot hole. But if you don't have that, you can just drive. I just posted the link in the script in the chat. It will be in the description as well for these things because there can be some complications with installing the door armor. If the door is made properly, it really won't have enough room for the jam shield, the one around the lock itself, and the hinge shield. So you probably would have to do some minor like routing type work. Yeah, and there's no reason to even say anything. There is zero chance, like they're allowed to lie to you, first of all. There is literally nothing that you're compelled to utter out of your mouth in any situation where you haven't been subpoenaed. You literally never have to say a word. Now, that's not always the best bet, as we've seen with like Mossad Ayub and the brief statement and stuff like that. But even identifying yourself, you don't have to actually say anything. You could just hand over your information. There's nothing that you actually have to say if you're not being subpoenaed. You don't have to give them any verbal utterances. There's people who literally are incapable of making verbal utterances. You know what I mean? Appreciate it, Versatech. But I got a little sun today. Need to start working out again. But um, yeah, so just don't go out if they have a warrant. Then they can hold that up. You can read that, and then it's up to you at that point whether you want to let them in or not. Once they've proven they're police, proven that they have a valid warrant, things like that. But if it's just someone who wants to talk to you, tell them to go fucking finger pop each other's assholes. Open carry has been legal here in Florida for 2 years. Well, open carry has been legal in Florida for many years if you're going to and from hunting and fishing, which none of the stupid police there know is even a law. And now they have permitless carry. I don't believe they have full open carry in Florida yet, so be careful with that. Unless that recently changed. I really don't think you can just have actual open carry like they have here in Nevada or Arizona or whatever. But permitless carry they have in Florida now, permitless concealed carry, and an open carry when you're going to and from hunting and fishing or participating in hunting and fishing, as far as I know. Um, they really need to make nationwide like standard on this because it is a constitutional issue. The Second Amendment is a federal thing. But yeah, so the doorcade and is a lot easier to install with minimal, even if you do have to take a Dremel or something and or chisel out a little bit. So if you're renting or something like that, always replace the screws. These, like if you look, I'm going to send myself a picture because actually I don't know if I can. I took a picture of this. They're literally like this long. The screws that are in your hinges and in your deadbolt strike plate and everything, they're like that long, like half an inch, maybe not even sometimes, even if they're an inch. Get 3-inch replacement screws. SPQR says, tell the cops through the door you have a handful of acorns and are willing to use them if they don't come back with a warrant. Exactly. Would you live in AZ or NV? I do live in NV. I'm in Vegas, baby. Rico says, hi, Eric. There's Aurora Australis 2, Southern Lights as north as Uruguay, which would amount to something to North Texas on the northern hemisphere. No major disruptions over here, too. Point is the PD aren't told so. They're not told a lot of things, and that's why I hate their arrogance and violence over all these things because they don't even, and then they'll always tell you, well, we're not lawyers. Yeah, so then why the fuck are you acting like? You sure seem pretty goddamn certain of the law when you're holding guns on people and stealing their property and preventing them from moving around. So that really falls flat then at that point. Like you made a verbal determination or a legal determination when you used force to enact your version of the law. So don't fall back now and, oh, well, we're not trained in the law. Fuck you. Not you, but anyone who would say this. Sorry, it's a topic which I get very heated. I have my own run-ins, but I will say that I'm 1-0 got a car out of the deal last time, and that police officer is no longer employed as a police officer. So, but yeah, so that's what you need to do. And this leads into my point about what you need to do. The window, if you can't do the window cages because that is expensive, at the very least, you should get the window films and obviously the door stuff. If you can just replace your strike plates and your screws on uh, your doors. And I like the physical blockers too, like the door cage. On Guard was the one that I used to have, but they don't make those anymore. It goes in the floor, so it can be a little tougher to put in if you don't have a subfloor, if you have concrete or something. But the Doorcade one is really easy to install, and the physical blockers are good because it also prevents any sort of bypassing of the lock. So even if you can replace the strike plate all you want, but if someone manages to pick or drill out the lock or something, then the door is going to open anyway. And this blocking it from the inside, it can't be done when you're not at the house. So, but you can physically block the door when you're there. So even if they had a key, even if they had an actual key or picked it or whatever, they can't get in with the Doorcade. But it is a little bit more. Some people don't like, they think it looks crazy to have a blocking thing in there. But I think it's probably a better bet for most people, especially if you're renting, because it's a little bit less intensive of an install sometimes, and it is if it's something where you have like a landlord or other people who might have keys, then it physically blocks the door, which is good too. But make it so your door simply can't just be kicked in, and that eliminates a huge percentage of like these situations with even with law enforcement, but probably not, but mostly just normal break-in type situations. And at the very least, even if someone did have like a battering ram or something, it'll give you time to figure out what's going on. And if you add into that some sort of camera system, I think you're a long way, at least being able to prepare and see what's going on. And we know the police if you do have to call 911, they're going to take like 45 minutes to get there. So you will have a little bit more time. They give them a little bit more time to get off their asses. But that leads into the barricading your house, basically, or just not even barricading. These are simple things. It's absurd to me that people have that there are these standards, and I'm not in favor of the government mandating pretty much anything, but it is kind of weird to me that they mandate all these safety issues for like weather straps and stuff on the way the houses are built and other safety issues around appliances and whatever. And then houses are still just able to be made. The vast majority of even brand new houses being made now, the doors being prevented from being kicked in by a third of a 2x4 that's been drilled out in the middle, and that's it. And maybe a piece of uh, trim on the other side, and that's it. That's literally it. Your metal deadbolt just goes into one piece of wood with a hole in it, and a little strike plate. It's about the size of not even half of a business card, and it's got a quarter-inch screw in or a half-inch screw in there. Terrible. It's super easy to fix, and that eliminates a lot of these normal situations. Yeah, if the cartels come to get you still, it's not going to keep out the SWAT teams, not going to keep out the cartels, but uh, it goes a long way in preventing a lot of the normal stuff that you will be seeing as we move into this further decline. Like, I still don't think we're going to have like a major shit the fan event. I think our future, and that's what this video is mainly about, is looking forward. I've seen the future, and it's South Africa, basically. I follow some Twitter accounts about people who are dealing with community. They're basically like Citizens Watch, but South Africa style, where they have to have like night vision goggles and stuff. So we're gonna, as you descend into a place, into almost lawlessness, but even worse, like I have said in the past, because you still have government, you're still gonna get in trouble for doing all manner of petty things the government doesn't want you to do. While at the same time, you have to worry about actual, like, literal armed gangs of marauders trying to raid your house or follow you home and stuff. And it's also interesting because it's not like some of these other countries. There seem to be, I'm not certain about the exact laws about firearms in South Africa, but they're obviously a lot more proliferated there than in like Europe and stuff. So it's an area where there's a lot of firearms, a lot of different demographic issues, if you will, groups that are beefing and super high crime, slowly crumbling infrastructure. And I literally think that that's what our future is like. Our future is not going to be Mad Max. It's going to be what South Africa is now, or what Mexico was, or El Salvador was a few years ago. You know what I mean? And El Salvador's gotten a lot better. I think Mexico's actually seems to be getting a little bit better, and I like their outlook. They see, at least seem to be on a slow uptrend. We'll see how they manage to deal with they're pretty intertwined with the U.S. in a lot of ways too. So when the U.S. dollar and the U.S. starts really having issues, I don't know how that's going to affect them. I haven't researched Mexico specifically, but I think South Africa is our future. So it's interesting to look and see the type of problems that are and how they're being dealt with there. And I think that gives us a really good glimpse into a possible future, what we're going to have to do to deal with it. Appreciate it, Lance. That is followed for years and appreciate my knowledge and insight. Sonny says only 15 million no care enough to own an AR. 90% of them don't have a 22 unit. Only 100 that can have the silence for the AR, and less than half of them have a short barrel. Without subsonic 22 ammo, the silenced AR ain't worth much. That depends. I don't necessarily agree with every element of that. I will say that subsonic 22 ammo is so weak that it's practically worthless. I shot like a glass Coke bottle, like a glass soda bottle in my backyard without running it through a suppressor because you don't need to when it's subsonic 22 is already pretty quiet. I just shot at my backyard from like 20 feet away and it bounced off. Didn't even break the glass. So I wouldn't count on that to be doing any sort of offensive operations. Don't forget to replace the screws in the door hinges with longboards. Yeah, exactly. The hinges, and check the door side ones too, because you can replace the hinges going into the wall or the screws holding the hinge to the wall, but there's also screws holding the hinge to the door, and those need to be replaced too. The hinges on the screws on both sides, the and the strike plate. Tactical fat naps is always great when you do a live stream. Appreciate it, man. I will hope to be doing more soon. I've been ironing out my schedule about how I should be able to do more live streams and trying to make a more regular videos in general. And I have a couple coming up that I need to do. Still doing the footwear video for Brian, longtime supporter of the channel, who's been asking about it. And I have at least two video like product reviews that people send me stuff and I need to do by the end of the month. And a bunch of others that I want to do. But in April, I was being a degenerate and doing this poker promotion where the top 80 people get entered into a big free roll tournament, and the top 20 are guaranteed an extra $1,000. So whoever gets the most hours. So I played 250 hours of poker in April. So it's the most. I am officially a Vegas degenerate now. It's happened. I front loaded all my normal work in March. So April I didn't do anything but poker. So now I'm catching up a little bit on other work too. So that's part of the reason. SF says, for Sunny says, having the most basic needed gear, much less the skills needed, always important. SFDCL says, Eric, I know you're in desert community, but have you ever tried hammock camping? I don't sleep well in a hammock at all. I'm not what I would consider a good sleeper, and I can't necessarily just lay on my back and fall asleep for hours. I'm always tossing and turning, and it's torture for me to try to sleep in something like a hammock. It hurts, and I can't move enough, and it's agony. I can't even sleep like really on airplanes or in chairs very much, and that was really bad last year where I had to kind of stay in a seated position because if I laid down flat, that tumor would act up again and start spazzing, crushing my nerves. So I had to sleep in a chair or try to sleep in a chair sitting up and just couldn't really do it very well. Sonny says they can't even figure out how to get 12K college loans and pay for them with their plasma sales, $50 per hour, one time per week. Who is this? Yeah, there's a lot of ways that that you can get extra money like that. And I think the best bet is to just, in a time like this, you have to increase your income somehow. You can't hide from inflationary price increases by saving money. It just doesn't work. Eventually, if it keeps increasing prices, doesn't matter what percentage of your income you're saving, if the income doesn't get up, eventually doesn't go up, you'll eventually get squeezed. So you have to introduce like side hustle type stuff. And luckily some of that is pretty easy, basic eBay stuff, go to garage sale. You don't have to do a lot. If you really cut your expenses, you don't have to do a lot of that. And the good thing is that the price of used goods naturally floats with inflation. And so doing things like flipping stuff on eBay or wherever, Facebook Marketplace, that the prices of stuff naturally rises with inflation as well. So you always get the market value for stuff. And that would go the same for plasma and whatever donated plasma. Donating blood and semen, not mixed together. But yeah, so I think South Africa is our future. Unfortunately, if we go continuously on this path. And I do think that we're reaching a very critical point in terms of the financial system where something is going to, I don't even want to say break, but something has to happen within the next year or two, something big. It can't just go on a steady the way things have been. That's why I really think that you have to get out of the dollar. And this is not financial advice. Nothing I say is legal advice. That would be stupid. But I do think you should pick yourself up some of these. Forged in the heart of dying stars. Literally. Properties have no equal, no counterparty risk. Don't have to worry about. This is such a beautiful nugget. Beautiful stuff. And I really think it's gonna, you have some of that, have some actual physical cash on hand for short-term perturbations. And then it's hard to say what thing, unfortunately, what things are gonna happen in the next year or two, because there's some scenarios where you would want to have almost all cash and nothing in like stocks or anything else. And there's other scenarios where cash is going to get wrecked and you would want to be in things 100% in things that could float with a melt up. So obviously precious metals is one of those. I do think crypto, the major crypto is one of those. I'm not a crypto hater. I don't think you should put a huge percentage of your wealth in crypto because there are definitely scenarios where that could get locked up or laws could change or whatever. And but I do think it is going to be a blow off valve for demand seeking assets outside of the dollar system when that time comes. I think it's already happening now for sure. And I mean, we're seeing more and more issues with the banking, especially the small and medium sized banks. I think there's going to be a lot more failures. So that's why I think it's important to have um, some physical cash on hand. But I also think it's important to have some dry powder in it. Like if you have a brokerage account, I think having some funding in there is good because there's a lot of scenarios where stocks are going to get clubbed, in the short term. But if we avoid a total economic dirt nap scenario, they will eventually recover, at least in nominal sense, and you could get some amazing deals, you know. And I think too often preppers don't look at that possibility. Sort of they've accepted that everything's going to be like at the end, and you're not gonna have to worry about paying your rent in 25 or 30 years when you're retired or whatever. And I think that's a huge oversight for most people. Tactile fat naps. I cut out half-inch plywood board at the mint to the window next to my front door, and I'm able to wedge it in with a metal bar as well as supplies nearby if I have to nail down that barrier. Yeah, that's a great idea. I was thinking about that just today, actually, about pre-cutting boards to the window shape, stuff like that. Maud says, "Yo, let's go." I agree. Let's fucking go. All right, let's go with questions. What do you got? Some obscure executive order or controlled pre-programmed incident. I mean, that stuff's always a possibility. I see a lot of in general incompetence and just, I think a lot of these agendas that they have aren't even kind of done with enough foresight to. They're just stupid people with stupid ideas doing stupid thing and evil things, and in all different facets and every level, you know, which is unfortunately worse because there's not like one particular, it's just the weakness of humanity. It's not one particular entity that we can try to expose or uncover or destroy or something like that. It's just a weakness of humanity. I do not have a water well. I have water storage containers. Yes. I think out here to drill a well not only is incredibly difficult if you wanted to do it legally, because of all the restrictions around the aquifer and stuff, but you'd have to go down like 300 to 500 feet or through a bunch of rock. So it's prohibitive. What do you think about the Kendrick and Drake beef? I don't. Don't think about it at all. I think all those guys are a bunch of fairies who, as Jay-Z said, are loud as a motorbike but wouldn't bust a grape in a fruit fight. And I don't care what they're flapping their gums at each other about. I only know of the beef. I don't know any of the details about it, and I don't care. Besides, a lot of those guys literally suck dick for their record deals, as we're finding out. So don't go try and act hard now. All right, what else we got? Just look at this thing, man. 500 gallon, 1,000 gallon, what's best? Depends on your situation. If you have to move, if you're ever planning on moving them, you really can't go anything over like 25 gallon because even a 50-gallon drum, you have to have a special carts for it. And unless you have like hydraulic jack lift or something, if you think about moving them, 10-gallon containers are probably the biggest you want to go. Most of us wouldn't be. If you're rural, I would try to get some big cisterns or a big tank, maybe in a water tower type situation. Buried is great if you can do it. It's not necessary unless you think that there is some sort of risk from it being like punctured or seen or whatever. And if as long as they're above ground, you're gonna have some level of like water pressure effect that you can use, even if it's not elevated like a water tower. But if you have some land, having it up on a hill or some even like 10 feet off the ground, a big cistern or something, or have a little cistern. Like if I could put like a maybe a IBC tote, so like a 250-gallon IBC tote, um, up 10 feet off the ground, something like that, to make like a makeshift water tower. Then you could have a solar and then a bigger buried cistern just for protection and temperature control and all that stuff, save space. And then you could have a small solar pump that just trickle pumps stuff into the water tower, and then you'd have legit pressure from there. That would the setup that I would do slash will do whenever I get a real like off-grid site. Do you have any strategies for vehicles parked on the street? How would you secure them? There's really not many too many ways you can secure them. You could always the best bet is if you could have some kind of kill switch, so it doesn't even matter if someone has a key, they can't start the car. It's very difficult to stop them from being like because like guys who do why am I blanking? Like repo man, they can just if you have like the right type of tow truck or something, you can just drag it out of there, tires screaming, pull it back up on a truck, whatever. Like they just drag it away. So there's not a whole hell of a lot you can do to prevent that. But I mean, you could get your own like boot if you want and put it on there. There's tracking devices you can get for non-SHTF scenarios like Bluetooth trackers, air tags, stuff like that if you wanted to. I haven't bothered to own a belt knife in decades. They are not versatile enough for me to carry. Give me a multi-tool, a saw blade to be held in the vice grip of that tool. Depends. Yeah, everything is so situationally dependent that it's interesting to see people. Like, you can find a bunch of legit people who are feel really strong about one particular thing because that is their reality. Like this is the stuff that they have had to do. This is the problems that they've encountered. So it's, very important to them. And other people who have done just as real stuff, maybe in a different location, maybe not even, and just haven't had the same issues, are not going to be focusing on the same problem. Just like I think it was one of these Green Beret guys who I really like. I don't remember who it was. I think it was Clay Martin. Good stuff. Never seen anything stupid come out of him, but he was like super adamant that you had to get the um why can't I think of words today? The tourniquet TQ with the aluminum spindle thing or handle, whatever it's called, because the plastic ones just aren't can't be relied on. Because he had one break on him one time, and some guy like either did die or almost died. It's like a legit problem, legit happened to him. That's like that is reality. But I've had other people, even other SF guys, who have used the plastic ones forever, never had a single issue with them. So to them, that's like not a real concern. So it just depends. You have to figure out and try to anticipate what the problems that you are. And there's little things like that that just because you haven't had that problem, if it's not a huge, like, is it really that much more difficult to get the metal one? Probably not. So even though you might not have had that problem, is there any reason not to upgrade to it for $3, $4 more? Probably not. So if you can head off even potential problems like that with no discernible downside, then go for it. But there's other things like you can have people argue all day about like which gun is better, which type of system is better, belt rig, chest rig, whatever. Like a lot of that stuff is going to be preference and MET-TC dependent, as we always said in the Army, which is mission, enemy, trained troops, time, civilians on the battlefield, basically all the elements of your upcoming mission or operation or scenario that are going to vastly change what is best. And it's super hard to anticipate that stuff. So you just go with what you have had to experience, what is more common for your area. Like, yeah, is it possible that I would, that a mission or scenario might come up where I would need negative 30 boots? Probably possible, but I live in Las Vegas. So is it a much better idea to have my normal gear setup be hot weather boots? Yeah. obviously. So don't just listen to other people. Listen to why they're come to the conclusions that they have. Sonny says, I love the cold steel shovel. Is that the one with the wooden handle? I make a handle for it in an hour and get a lot more work done. And yeah, those are solid. SF says, Eric, I don't know if you knew or not, but for logistical reasons, I had to shorten my name. Actually, South Florida DCL. I assume so. Yeah. Thanks for stopping by again. Figured that was you. Sucks being on your knees trying to dig chop, especially if the ground is wet. Yeah, for sure. Or cold and wet, which is worse. Remove and hide a few spark plug wires. Yeah, those are all things. Like, there's a lot of things you can do to make sure your car will not turn on. And that's one way. There's some simple ways. Like I said, if you can install a hidden kill switch, that'll do pretty much all of that. And it can be much more easily undone than trying to put in spark plugs and stuff like that back in. But so it's really just prevent the car from being started is like one element of stopping it from being stolen, or preventing it from physically being able to move. Like I said, if they have a tow truck or something, that's a lot more difficult. But it's a lot less common of a scenario to face too. I can see Canadian Garden Girl says I can loan you my -40 boots here in Canada. No, thank you. As I probably said before, my blood has gotten so thin after growing up in Florida and then living out here in Vegas that even though I have family members who all, live in Wisconsin and Minnesota and everywhere like that, I can't take the cold weather anymore. I've become a wussy. This hurts. Everything hurts. No problem. Yeah, I just recently got a trailer for my junk selling adventures, flipping storage units and stuff like that. A little cargo trailer, and we should also hopefully be. It's not technically an off-road trailer, so, but if I have to like really bug out cross country on normal roads at least, it would help take a lot of gear with us. But it doesn't have an engine, obviously. It's just a cargo trailer. So I've had to get a wheel lock thing to prevent people from just being able to drag it away. Eric Chow far away. I have a heavily modified crunch multi-tool with 2 files, a drill blade. Yeah, a lot of that stuff comes in handy a lot with the multi-tools. And the real tools, not like the little Swiss Army knives. Those are cool, but a lot of those, especially because they don't lock open or anything, they're not nearly as functional as a real multi-tool. SBQR says, when are you moving back to Florida? I've dialed in pasture food production to produce absurd yields. That's awesome. Probably when, well, first of all, I don't have enough money to be moving anywhere. I really do like it out here. It's not nearly as good place to be for a actual severe shit the fan scenario. Eventually, I'm going to have to, if the government keeps getting more and more oppressive, and like I said, we keep moving into South African territory. Eventually, I'm going to have to do a sheep farm somewhere in the mid south to southeast somewhere. It has to be. So I want to do sheep. I think I've talked about this before, not because I have particular or any desire to raise animals. I don't actually like doing that kind of work, but I want to be able to have a source of food, specifically meat, that isn't adulterated or interrupted by logistical issues or anything like that. And cows are a huge logistical issue compared to sheep or goats. Sheep or goats would be fine. And I also want to be somewhere where in the natural range of the black soldier fly, because those are being able to like turn waste into grubs you can feed your chickens. How far away do you have to travel to get to your bug out place? I don't have a specific bug out location in the sense of like a off-grid cabin or anything. I have, family in certain areas, things that I could go to if I needed to, but I don't personally own like a cabin or bug out location. If you're just talking about somewhere to get away from the city and camp out in the wilderness, you don't have to go very far out here. If you could have some resources with you, I could drive like 40 minutes straight out into the desert with the 4-wheel drive and just set up a camp and probably never see another person again. How you feeling health wise? I'm feeling good, man. I appreciate it. No, I haven't. He said I haven't been on your channel lately. I think you're shadow banned. I mean, I probably am shadow banned, but I have been very bad about posting content recently. And like I said, I was doing a degenerate poker promotion thing or I played 250 hours of poker last month, so I wasn't really doing anything else other than playing poker. I don't know if you mentioned it, but do you have an estimated timeline on how long the Ukraine war will last? I hear the front line is collapsing, but who knows? Yeah, it definitely seems like we've definitely seen the narrative change on that, but my timelines are always seem too accelerated. Like I never would have, I always thought that Russia would eventually win, had the upper hand, and a lot of what we are hearing was nonsense. I thought it would have been over by now. It's been 3 years almost, right? Was it 21 or 22 when they first invaded? I don't remember, but it's been at least 2 years. So, and the question is not when it's going to end, it's when we're going to the next step. Because unfortunately, like I've also always been saying, is that there is zero chance that Ukraine is going to defeat Russia like in a vacuum, straight up, Ukraine versus Russia. It was always a question of what the level of NATO involvement is going to be. And it seems that were they willing to put, not just put money, but put material and eventually literal troops on the ground? And the answer to that seems to be yes. They seem to be willing. They're certainly saying they're willing. France is talking about putting actual troops on the ground, giving them F-16s. And so the question is when we move to that next stage of Russia overtly fighting NATO, which unfortunately I do think is going to happen. And I think that that's going to happen. I think both sides are probably holding out a little bit to see what's going to happen with the U.S. election and to see how that changes things. But I definitely think within the next 2 years, feels like it's going to be much sooner than that. But like I said, I'm always wrong about that. So I think within the next 2 years, we're going to see direct conflict between Russia and other countries, at least. Maybe not the U.S. directly, but not just Ukraine. Maybe Poland, maybe UK, maybe U.S. issued NATO or U.S. supplied NATO troops, whatever, something like that. I do think it's going to see that within the next. My gut says it's going to be within the next year, unless the election changes things dramatically, and if Donald Trump were to win, and then hopefully see how bad of an idea this is and change the direction of the country. But barring that, yeah, it certainly seems like something will elevate to the next level within a year and a half or so. And there's a lot of people who think that China is going to use that as an opportunity to make their move before, uh, you know, some people have said 2025, certainly before I think 2027 timeframe. Does anyone talk in your area about bugging out, or do you try to keep that to yourself? I really don't have too many local people that I unfortunately think are worthy of giving away too much information like that. It's something that I need to work on probably more than anything else is network type stuff. Your BOL better be in the woods around your local water source because you won't be going any further due to roadblocks and ambushes. Like I said, it all depends on the situation. Not every shit advanced scenario is going to involve that stuff. Some will. You need a year's supply of grains, powdered milk, sugars, all buried at your BOL. Get a tunnel dug. Depends. Like I said, it all depends. I've always been adamant that there is no such thing, technically, as shit the fan. There's all sorts of various things that could happen, and even all grid down scenarios would not be created equal, and parameters are going to be vastly different depending. Subscribers have not gone up much, but all those prepper channels have grown. Yeah, and part of it is my fault for not creating enough content, but I do think that have been. I mean, I can look at my analytics. I've seen videos that have a natural looking curve and then get nuked literally to a flat line. I've taken screenshots of it. So, and like I said, I could probably have made it better by creating more content, but it's frustrating when that happens. It's putting a lot of work into a video that then gets 500 views because it gets literally nuked by the algorithm when it starts doing well. Yeah, that is the hardest part. I agree, community. And unfortunately, it's probably going to end up being the most important part, especially in the more severe, like probably quartile of scenarios. That's the most important element. Like if there can be all sorts of minor scenarios to where you can do it on your own, but just by having extra resources to, weather supply chain disruptions and stuff like that. But any of the major scenarios, it's one of the more important elements, starting it or finding it, anything, just even finding a couple of people that are, you know, correctly minded without being crazy. Because as much as some people don't want to admit it, there are a lot of fucking crazies in the prepper community who just have bizarre ideas about stuff. They're not logical. They're not even necessarily good people. It's not automatic that people who see the need for prepping are always going to be the smartest or most well adjusted or whatever type of people, unfortunately. There's a lot of great people too, obviously, but not all of them. It's not automatic, that's for sure. And that's true of any group of people. Pushing the internet is sketchy and the government is watching. Always. Yeah. And that's why I'm saying like avoiding some of these things like the Ring doorbell and stuff specifically because of the big tech kind of privacy issues. If you're really gonna, I mean, the advantages of some of that stuff is too good to ignore unless you're really gonna get rid of all the stuff like the phone anyway. If you're gonna get rid of the phone and your internet and all like they're getting all that information from you anyway, you know, and you need to be aware of that and realize what you would need to do if it comes time that you want to break away from that. But not utilizing any of it until then, when you're already utilizing some of it, it just doesn't make sense to me, especially in a situation where it could be a huge benefit. But you just have to be understand that there may be a time that you just need to instantly ditch all that stuff. Appreciate it, SBQR. So the Lexi video where you have to get out and have 30 seconds, 3 minutes, or 15 minutes. What do you grab? That's actually been a literal kind of litmus test that I've been using for trying to organize and stage my preps is like, what am I grabbing if I have to leave immediately? And I mean like immediately, like you said, 30 seconds or something. And then I think these are good jumps, 30 seconds, somewhere in the 3 to 5 minute, and then 15 to 30 minutes, and then several hours. Now, obviously, the several hours one is easier anyways, but it's still, basically like if you say, okay, things are getting bad, I need to go to some family member's location or my bug out location, and nothing's happened yet. That's easiest, but you still should have some idea of triaging your gear. The most difficult one for me is like the 15-minute one because there's not a huge difference between the 30-second one and the 3-minute one. The 30-second one is shoes, bug out bag, basically. The 3-minute one, all you're really doing differently is maybe changing your clothes so you have better, gear set up on, maybe throwing one or two more totes in your vehicle than you would be, but it's not a whole lot different than the 30-second one. You might just get a little more time to, fill up a water jug or something. The 3 to 5 minutes doesn't change things a whole hell of a lot. So for me, the most difficult one is the 15-minute one, where you probably gonna be taking your vehicle and then triaging and staging your equipment so that because you're staging every stuff at that, it's going to make a big difference between you being able to fill your truck in 15 minutes versus an hour. And that's one of my biggest problems. And I think it's a huge problem for preppers in general is we tend to see the value in a lot of these resources and thus collect them in totes and in boxes and in stuff that's just randomly all around our house. And like if you knew you had to leave and you had 15 to 20 minutes, which of the stored food are you going to put? And if you're grabbing a big 2 buckets of rice, is it even organized in a way that you won't are you going to end up with just all rice and no seasoning or no meat or are the canned goods if you have all the canned spam in the world but it's not in a box, how long is it going to take to literally put all those in a tote and stuff? These are all real questions and not ones that I necessarily have answers to all of them yet, but that's I think a hugely important kind of mental exercise to go through. And I think those are good cutoff points too. Obviously the 30-second one is like immediately if all you have time to do is basically get out of the house. um, that's one of the easier ones because you're so limited that there's no decisions to make. You have time to throw in your shoes and get a bag. So make sure you have your bug out bag. The toughest one to me, like I think, is the 15-minute to let's say even 15 minutes to an hour. But I like the 15 to 30 minute. It's a good one. And that's the most one that's going to have the biggest difference based on your preparedness levels, I think. That would be a great episode for you trying to figure out who the nut jobs are. Yeah, I mean, and like Che has talked about this too. He's done a lot of good prepper meetups and stuff, and it's just an unfortunate element of the kind of community is that there are some nut jobs. Sonny says the mountain bike and Bob, the bike is already loaded. However, if it's daylight, you have to wait until dark unless it's a flood. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it depends. You never know. But the mountain bike is obviously a huge kind of force multiplier, if you will, for a situation like that, especially if you have like a cargo trailer of some kind, even one that's not specifically a cargo trailer, but made for like having your kids in it. Like you put your toddler in a little uh trailer for your bike, you could throw an extra whole extra bug out bag amount of gear in there. or at the very least, not have to ride the bike with the big backpack on you. Lance says condoms, tampons, soap, alcohol, hydrogen peroxide, rank in order of preps. Depends on what you're into, I guess. Have you heard of Bear Independent? I have heard of him. He was on the I've been on a live stream with him and JJ before, but I'm not super familiar with him, but I do know who he is. He's the one he basically owned slash made Refuge Medical, right? If I'm not mistaken. Which by all accounts have good products. I don't personally own any of them. Have you heard of Bear Independent? I was watching later on. Yeah, he got big. I don't know him very well. Say he's an interesting dude. That's all I can muster at this point because I don't know him too well. My impression is he's one of those guys that is just like, this is the way it is because reasons, and you're a fucking idiot if you don't listen. That's the impression I get. But like I said, I've have very little interaction with him, and by all accounts, his medical his medical products are legit. I know JJ. If that is him though, that is Refuge Medical is his, right? Or he at least was involved or started, I think. It would make a great video. I agree. Doesn't pay attention, grabs a bucket of just salt or right. I mean, exactly. If your stuff isn't marked, or like I said, you grab a couple buckets, but it's all just one thing. Maybe you accidentally just grab the powdered milk instead of the rice or whatever. I am the Lord among us and the ruler of the wasteland, the Ayatollah of rock and rolla. SFDCL says he's too religious for me. I did get that, obviously. That's someone being religious is an obvious deal breaker for me, but when it clouds a bunch of weird ideas, then yeah. Um, I can't leave. I have too many dogs staying in place in a rural area already. Yeah, I mean, but there's certain things where you have to leave. Like I said, if there's fire, magma flow, if there's a Red Dawn invading Chi-Com army or something, like these are probably, other than the fire, are probably pretty low probability events, but it is possible. Depending on where you live, if Yellowstone blows off and you have 4 hours before you're under 6 feet of ash or something like that, then staying for your dogs isn't going to change much. I would instead try to have a. How many dogs do you have? You can't throw like 5 dogs in a car or something. Jump Medic is awesome. I know. I haven't seen his. I know. What's up, Stuart? Skinny Medic is a decent one. I had to evacuate from a fire in 2018. Bought instant crates at Costco. I have a 5-gallon bucket of water next to the front door and have a specific plan what to grab now. Yeah, that's important. Like I said, that this having the plan, having a list, and having them pre pre because if you have like it takes like how long it takes to throw a tote in your car? Like 30 seconds. That's it. And that you could have one or two totes. But if you have a full two totes and a bug out bag, like that's potentially like months, at least weeks that you could survive away from your place with camping style gear. So that's my plan. It's not set up yet. I don't have it fully organized, but I have at least a couple totes. Dogs are good food and shit the fan. Oh, you can't eat your dogs though. What do we got? Christy Gnome over here. Obviously, in a life or death situation, yeah, you got to. But I would probably eat some humans first before any beloved dogs. And out of hospital EMS, their gear is legit. For jump medics, I'll check it out. I haven't heard of them specifically. I'm not an expert in medical gear for sure, but I do like from what I've seen from the Refuge Medical, I like the idea because what I've always said is like with medical stuff, as with almost everything, having a huge breadth of stuff seems like the most useful, but what usually happens is there's a few things that you just need a shitload of, like the bulky dressings and antibiotic. You know what I mean? If you have like basic wound care stuff, you just need a lot of that. Is going to be more important than like all this stuff for intubating and for sucking chest wounds and all that. Like, especially if you're talking about a scenario where you don't have a legit like SF medic or trauma surgeon, like having your hydrofin or whatever it's called, like the guy's gonna fucking die. Doesn't matter if you have a seal for your chest wound. If you don't have a legit operating room to get him to it in a couple hours, he's dead anyway. You don't just survive that stuff without like surgery. Make your own kits if you know what you want. Yeah, and that's usually the case, almost always. But as someone who sells some kits specifically, what I will say is that if it's a legit product, it's going to be very hard to make it better on your own for cheaper. You'll be able to make it better, you'll be able to make it cheaper, but simply because businesses will be buying this stuff in bulk and then splitting it up, it's very difficult to do it better and cheaper on your own if it's a legit product. If you find a product and you can do it better and or cheap better and cheaper on your own, then it's just not a very good product. And that's initially why I made this, is because I didn't like the products that were out there. I was like, I'm going to make one. And then I was like, shit, if I just make one, it's going to be like $100 to make this. Whereas if I make a bunch of them, I can make them much cheaper than that and then sell off the extras to just pay for it basically. And that's when the Rule of the Wasteland Survival Fishing Kit was born. And I imagine, without having spoken to him about this, because I do think is it Refuge Medical Bear Independence? Someone let me know if I'm wrong with that. But I imagine he followed a very similar path with that, looking into like, I can make a better kit than this, than be like, wow, that's gonna be really expensive to just make one or two. Might as well make a bunch. Put a link to your merch. Oh, just go to Rule the Wasteland on Amazon or rulethewasteland.com. Here's a link. www.rulethewasteland.com. Link is now in the chat and will be in the description. Eric, if you don't think the same way Bear does, then you're wrong. Yeah, I got that. That's what I was saying. I instantly got that kind of, and that's okay with me in general. But it does mean that I'm probably going to limit my time around those people or my interactions with them. I don't even think that that's necessarily a wrong way to be. I think it's a little dangerous to think that you're incapable of being wrong, which I'm not saying he does. And to some extent, we all should make a decision, go with it, and think that we're doing the right thing. But there is an attitude about it, and some people have that I'm just like, okay, bro. Didn't read my post. 60 grain, 950 feet per second. Agree, subsonics have the same foot pounds as normal high speed 22s, but no sonic prior to the science. So, yeah, that's good, but that's you have to have all a specific setup for that then too. And I would much rather go if you're going to run if you have a can and you're going to run subsonics, I'd much rather go 300 blackout anyway. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit more loud than a 22, but it's going to be way better performance pretty much every other aspect. I just don't trust 22 at all. I've shot it a lot and I've seen the things that it can do and the things that it just sometimes doesn't do and the failure rate for rimfire. And it's just I'm not sold that it's ever should be the primary go-to for anything other than like small game hunting or plinking or a backup. Which I just don't. I would never choose rimfire 22 long rifle as a first choice for anything like offensive or attack or even defensive. As an EMS preparers really need to have your skills down. I mean, everyone should have some basic medical, first aid type stuff. But I think more people need to realize the cutoff between the things that you're really feasible to be able to handle in a scenario where you can't take someone to a hospital or a legit surgeon after that. So you have to accept, like, is this kit for a scenario where they're going to be able to take them to the hospital? Then a lot of things apply differently than if this is a scenario where I'm not going to be taking anyone to a hospital or be able to. The 60 grain agrees keyhole and normal 22 rifling. Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to have it's a great choice for using like I have the 22 bolt swap out. I think those are great. That sounds like a perfect ammo for it, but I'm saying that would never be my primary choice. It's always going to be there as a backup versus, 5.56 or 300 blackout or 7.62 or something like that. Yeah, need to know your limits. And it's a reality of the situation because how you treat, like even something like a tourniquet doesn't do much if you just can't get somewhere. If you just leave, you can't just put a tourniquet on and leave it there until the guy heals, right? You'll have a bunch of necrosis and you lose the limb or whatever. So even a tourniquet is for a situation where they're going to be able to get treatment. It's called first aid for a reason because it's the aid that you do first before they actually can go get treated at the hospital. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't or can't prepare for situations where you're not going to be taking someone to a hospital, but just realize that some of those treatment options and the stuff that you would need to prepare for them are wildly different. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I will do plan on making more videos soon. I have a couple lined up. Like I said, we're gonna be doing the footwear video. I have two product reviews, be giving some stuff away, and should be fun. How do you feel about bulking up on medicine in towns, border Mexican towns? Go for it. If you trust the stuff, I think with Jace Medical and Contingency Medical and stuff like that now, it's not worth it unless you're like really close to Mexico. If you're, like I said, if you're in AZ and you can hop across the border, buy a bunch of cheap antibiotics and you trust those more, then I definitely think stocking up on antibiotics is crucial. I think everyone should do it. I think for most people in the US, just scrape together the couple $100 and get one of the packs from Jace or Contingency. And because now I don't think you can any longer even get the fish antibiotics without a prescription. So just go to Jace, go to Contingency, get the pack. I definitely don't think you can call yourself a prepper unless you have at least some of that stuff. Even if it's just a fish antibiotic, whatever. Like if you don't have antibiotics, like that is such a massive, massive deal for major shit the fan events. And even what we're looking like in just disruptions in supply chain stuff. It is super gay that antibiotics are so hard to get a hold of. It makes zero sense. Everything in this world is fake and gay though, so it's not that surprising. But luckily, they're not that hard to get a hold of now. With Jace and Contingency, they're really not that hard. It's going to take you a few $100, but it's like wham bam, it's done, which is great. And I have it. And I do have some fish antibiotics from before that was limited. Canned food rotator. I've used the FIFO can tracker, and I have an old video. Look it up. I did a review comparing the FIFO and the Consolidator or something. And it depends on most of it depends on the storage area of where you're going to be putting it, but they work great and it's really nice, but most of them are not super space efficient in terms of how much you could fit in an area by just stacking them versus using the rotators. So if you're really tight on space, you probably just have to suck it up and manually rotate. But if you're not super tight on space, they sure are a great like effort saver and everything. Fish and vet antibiotics and Jace medical sources, then yeah, I agree. Sucks that the FDA went after fish antibiotic companies when they need to get off the order from Jace. Yeah, I agree. There was a window of time there that we had that we probably didn't realize how good we had it, that we could get all these antibiotics for like cheap and no issues, but it's not hard to get them from Jace. They give you a decent amount, that initial Jace case pack, and you can even get ivermectin with them now, which that I haven't done yet. So probably go back and try to get that. But it was a good window of time to be able to get it from them. Sunday says canned food is too heavy, bulky, and expensive. Buy grains, have a hand to grain mill. I mean, I've talked before about how I kind of disagree with that. Um, I mean, I don't. It's obviously is heavier, it's bulkier, and it is more expensive than buying grain. But I don't. It's not part of my plan at all to buy raw grains and grind it up because first of all, that's a shitload of work. The the milled flour or rice or oats or anything like that, if you actually store it in oxygen-free long-term storage, like sealed, it lasts effectively just as long as raw wheat. You don't need, and I don't eat wheat almost ever, first of all, so I'm not going to switch to like grinding wheat after the apocalypse. And yes, canned food is much heavier, much bulkier, and more expensive, but it's still cheap. And what are you just going to eat? Make bread every day? I don't get what you have to store a bunch of other ingredients anyway, unless you're just going to put bread and water or flour and water together. I have thousands of calories of meat that's in cans. I'd much rather eat that than grind up some wheat berries. And if you're talking about making anything out of it, you still have to have bread or sugar stored. You still have to have some kind of milk or something stored, probably eggs, some kind of seasonings. Like that stuff's you can crack open a can and just eat it cold. Yeah, if you in a situation where you have to worry about bulk and weight, But as with everything, I think it's best to have a little bit of both. Because if you do have to do like we were talking about earlier, take 3 minutes or 15 minutes to load up your car, you're probably not going to be doing it with a ton of canned goods. That's the one where I'm going to use my freeze-dried food, my buckets of rice, maybe 1 or 2 boxes of canned goods, Mountain House type stuff if I have it, MREs if I have it, that sort of stuff. But that's one scenario. A lot of the other scenarios are I'm going to be sitting in my house worrying about we're just dealing with food shortages or massive price increases. And that way I will go to, canned meats or frozen meats or whatever. Feral Trainer says, do you have a shotgun? How about asking me a serious question? Next. Yeah, Stag Laredo gang in the house. I still think that the Stag Chili Laredo is the pinnacle of prepper foods. And honestly, the Wolf Chili is right up there too. It's just I don't like the flavor of the Stag is better, but the canned chili in terms of the like any canned good, it'll last almost indefinitely if you don't breach the seal. It has a fantastic mix of carbs, protein, and fats, which are hard to get all three of in any long-term storage food. The cost is still reasonable even though they've gone way up, it's still most of the time can be got for less than $3 a can, I think. And it has like 600 calories in a can, which is very high. And I think second only to like Spam in the amount of calories that are in a canned good. You get a lot sicker of having you'll get sick of eating rice and beans. Shotgun, get AK-50. Really sick. I mean, some people get sick of eating anything again and again. I know what I can eat almost indefinitely without getting sick of it. And I don't really buy that argument to begin with. Like, yeah, if you have to eat anything, I mean, not that I don't buy the argument, but of course, no one should store just one thing, whether that's wheat, whether that's Spam, whether it's never should just be one thing for obvious reasons. But the whole like, oh, you'll get sick of it. Like, well, I was sick of going to work every day. I had a fucking job too. But when you gotta do what you gotta do. When it's a choice between eating Spam again or eating wheat again or not eating, you're gonna eat it. Yeah, like Sonny says, you're getting a lot sicker of having nothing to eat. Yeah, but that's a false dichotomy. You don't have to have just one thing or nothing. Just get a little bit of everything. Canned foods last a long time. Wheat and rice and oats and anything else stored in can lasts a long time. Get some Mountain House or some whatever this stuff the Canadian Prepper is freeze dried stuff that's supposed to be really good. I don't remember the brand. Primal Elite. What is that stuff called? Peak refuel. Is that it? Supposed to be good? Never had any of them. Right. Yeah. As SPR says, you don't get sick of anything if the prospect of starvation is present. Yeah. You might wish you had other stuff, but the point is that's not a choice you have to make between eating nothing or only stockpiling one thing. Just store some varied foods. Search YouTube for AK-50 is custom build is freaking beast mode. Yeah, I think I've seen that. It's similar to like the AA-12, right? Which is what I've always wanted, the AA-12 auto shotgun. Pretty badass. Yeah, it says most of the world eats rice all the time. They don't turn it down. Yeah, and that's one of the things that I can eat. Like I ate rice and chicken like twice a day for like years at this one particular job. I don't really get tired of it as long as I have a few other things to throw in. Because it's like the cheapest thing you can get. You get a rotisserie chicken or the boneless, skinless leg meat in a big pack, and you can for like a couple bucks or less, you can have like a big pile of meat and as much rice as you want, basically. But appreciate you guys checking in. Send me some emails on at rulethewasteland@gmail.com on any like just random videos, ideas that you want. Like we got the one from SPQR about like getting ready. I've already got the footwear video coming up soon, but just any random ideas. I'm not can't promise that I'm going to be able to do them all. But I also am planning on doing more of my commentary style videos on Rumble or more of them there simply because there's a lot of spicy or even just not even as spicy, but by YouTube standards, it's just at risk. So I'll be doing more commentary type videos over there of stuff that I can't really talk about on YouTube. And so definitely go subscribe to the Rumble channel. The link is in the description of all my most recent videos. I'll put it in here when I'm done. And you should be able to find it just by searching Rule the Wasteland on Rumble. So there'll be more content showing up there too. Because ideally, we could all tell YouTube to fuck off and go help other businesses that don't, hate us. But in the time being, this is still where everyone is. So it's going to use both. because there's just not that many people. I'd get like 5 views on Rumbles right now anytime I post a video. But thanks for stopping by, guys, and